Oh, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Truth Bomb time. I'm Jay Scott,
And I'm Sandy, the Freedom Faith Warrior.
and we're going to give a little truth bomb coming up. All right, Tuesday, June 18th. How you doing? You just got back from vacay, so you should be happy camper.
Very well rested. Little bit of tan, little bit of sun, sand,
Sun and sand.
exercise. All
Can't
good.
go wrong. Can't go wrong there.
Nope.
Good for you. Well,
So,
winter.
and we're matching again,
We're
Scott.
matching.
And
Yeah.
I have my new shirt on. Kind of
Yeah, I
talking
like
about
that. Your 1776 shirt. Yeah.
I just like
We didn't even coordinate. I don't have a flag, though. I need to get a
I
flag.
have a flag. I need to get a flag. I love our country. So I'm just gonna say that.
Nice.
I love our country. And it's probably because it's where I was born.
That helps.
And it's probably because it needs to be loved. And I
Mm.
feel like people don't love it right now. And I'm just going to go on record saying, I love our country. I love what it stands for right now. I maybe don't love our history of our country on how it was formed and why and what we did at the time. I probably don't love that part because it wasn't done correctly or
Are you talking
peacefully.
about? Because I love our history. So there's certain areas, yeah, that
I'm just talking about the Native
like slavery.
Americans
Oh, Native
being
American.
displaced unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that. I don't think it's right when a country or peoples come in and try to displace the people that live there. And that
Yeah.
happens all the time. This is
It
not
does.
new.
It like
This
it's
is not
it
a
happens all
new
over the
thing.
world, and
I mean,
especially in
look at
history.
empire.
Right.
I mean, Rome tried to take over the whole world. England tried to take over the whole world. It's the Vikings tried to take over the whole world. So it's
Yeah.
not a new thing. People's coming in and trying to conquer whoever lives there to take ownership. This is not a new theme, or it's nothing. There's nothing new under the sun, as it says in Ecclesiastes. And God knows that, and God knows that we're people that war. So it's not a great thing. I don't like war. I like peace. But at the same time, I need to be proud and thankful and grateful for the country that I live in. I'm not one of those that'll go, oh, if they don't stop this policy, I'm moving to the Bahamas. Though it would be nice to move to the Bahamas or
Maybe like a summer
Costa
home
Rica.
or a winter home.
But I still love our country, and I still love our people, and I still love the diversity of our people, that we're not all from one native country and that we all mix together, that part of it.
Yeah.
And because I can learn a lot from other people and their cultures. We can learn a lot from them.
That actually, that's perfect because it leads into something that I just watched yesterday. Actually, it's a series of videos by John Vervaeke, I think, and it's called The Crisis of Meaning. And one of the things that he said, and another video I watched was Richard Dreyfuss talking to Dave Rubin. And one of the things he said I thought was really interesting. Richard Dreyfuss loves the country, big history buff. And he was saying that we should cherish our discussions and having both sides of an issue talked about. I don't think he used the word division, but what he was basically saying, and I really took it to heart, was that we should be happy the fact that we have opinions on both sides. And in fact, that's what made our country great. The fact that we could voice our opinions and not be locked up. But today, unfortunately, there's such division that people don't even want to talk to somebody else that has another opinion. In fact, they attack them personally. And for the most part, people are like, I don't want to talk to you if you're on one side or the other. And what he was saying is, no, that's what made our country, and we need to get that back to where it's actually a virtue, like the fact that we have different opinions, but we can talk amongst ourselves or debate it or whatever you want to call it. That's a really good thing. And so it dovetails to what you were saying. And
it's going to dovetail into my whole subject matter today.
Yeah. So
totally
unfortunately, we have a long way to go to get back to that or to get to that. And that's it's interesting because that's a theme that I also am really exploring. It's like, how can we get back to that? Because when you can get really jaded on some of the topics that we can talk about, and again, you can start to align with one side and then just, I'm not going to even think about or talk about anything with the other side. And we need to get back to that.
I think if you look at history, it's not until the later 1960s that there was even any type of equality with people. There was still a main theme of who was controlling things. Women didn't even get to vote till 1920. We're only 100 years in of just women being able to vote, and people of color didn't have a voice at all until after the 1960s. Okay?
That's amazing when you think about it. I really, when you think about that, it's not that long ago, and it's
60 plus, only about 60 years.
To think that, because that would it would just seem to me, if I just don't think about it logically, or if I just think about it, it's like, oh, that's been that way for at least 100 years.
No,
it hasn't.
Less than 100. And they say there's cycles, with 100-year cycles. Okay.
Right.
So we're in this 100-year cycle where finally a lot of people are getting their voice to be heard in all different cultures and diversity. Okay. I may not agree with it, but at least they can. Here's the thing, at least they can. And I might not agree with what they're protesting about or what it's all about, but that's not, at least they can. And that's the good about that, except for what we're finding is that's not true. That's not 100% true, because there's a certain sex, meaning SECT, and I can't say that correctly, apparently, but different sections of people that are being censored. So now it's went the whole opposite direction, that those people that have a certain mindset or a certain viewpoint are now getting censored. And so that's where it gets scary. Okay, everybody's allowed to say something except for these people, not these people. These people.
Well, that's why we're doing the show.
They've been in control
that's why we're bringing it up
a long time. So now they don't get a say, and now they're wrong. So when will there be peace? When, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know either, because it looks, or there's a lot of talk about, things are just getting worse and worse. But that's why we're here, to do like a duel, right? We want people to, wake up to the fact that there are a lot of people out there in the one world order, especially, that they want things to actually devolve and degrade to the point where they can almost rebuild it. They want to rebuild it in their own way. They want to tear it down. They want us to be divisive as we can and tear it completely down and then build it up. And we're saying no. One,
they don't
no.
want us to have peace.
And two, we can on our own get back to where we can be civil and have discussions. But we need to work at it. And part of bringing the stuff up is, this is our work. We're working. This is part of the work. We've got to talk about this stuff.
We have to. You can't put a blind eye to it anymore, right, Scott? Like, you cannot. You can't stick your head in the sand. Can't put a blind eye to it. You can't just say, I'm just going to worry about me and I don't care about everybody else, because that's not working. We've become a very self-centered nation. And you can, when it's self-centered, is look at traffic patterns. Look at when you're driving. Who cuts you off? Who won't let you in?
Right.
You're supposed to let one car in, then it's you, then another car, and
the
it's
zipper. You're supposed to zipper.
Doesn't happen. It doesn't.
Come on, people, zipper.
No, they don't do that anymore. No zippering. I'm not going to let you in. You're going to take my spot. You're going to get there 1 second before me. Oh my gosh. And I'm a horrible, self-confessed, I'm a horrible getting mad at the people driving person.
Road rage? Sandy, road rage.
I call them people. I always go, okay, person, just get over it. Okay, person. Like, I never. That's
better than than other words you could have used.
I don't use the expletives like
I
used to. I really used to drive like a northerner, versus a Midwesterner.
You northerners.
But, so
when I lived in Washington D.C., area, I came from the Northwest. We're all chill out here, and I realized that to live in that area meant I had to learn aggressive driving, or I would get run over. And actually, it was really not good for my blood pressure, because I found I had really high blood pressure when I lived on the East Coast. But man, you had to drive aggressively. Life was aggressive. And It just is. A lot of people, a lot of stuff going on, and the way our culture is, it's if I don't run you over, you'll run me over. So I better run you over first.
Look at over in the other countries in Europe where they have those huge roundabouts and they're all
Yeah,
on like mopeds and then there's cars in the middle of them and
right.
all that. And I'm just like, you
Why can't
know,
I? Why I immediately think of Chevy Chase when you bring up a roundabout. I don't know. There's one of those vacation
roundabout.
movies where he goes to Europe, like a vacation in Europe, and he just goes around.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't get right. How do I get it right? Or something. Oh my God! All right,
You have to know. You have to know
let's move
how to
on.
merge.
Let's move on to some specific. Yeah, merging, zippering, and merging. Okay. I've got 3 topics today that I'm gonna bring up. They're all related. They're all about. Actually, I think all of our topics today are about overreach, governmental overreach, and yeah, people that don't necessarily have our best interests in mind, and they're our leaders. Nope. All right. So let me share this. This is former CDC director. Get that a little bit bigger. Yeah, he predicts that the bird flu virus will be the next pandemic. Okay, I don't know if you heard about this. You've heard about the bird flu. Have you heard about it's
Yeah.
going to be X, the next disease X or whatever? Whatever
Oh,
the
disease
they
X.
I think I've heard it called before they were saying it's bird flu, they kept saying that there's going to be the next pandemic and it's going to disease X, like they're just going to pick one.
Just pick it.
Just pick one. So it looks like Robert Redfield believes that bird flu is going to be disease X. And basically he was talking in front of, I think it was a Senate, and basically just confirming that he thinks that the bird flu is going to be it. And there's some more detail in here. He says between 25 and 50% mortality rate, blah, blah, blah. This is just fear mongering. Now he's out of there now, but I guess the point I just wanted to bring up, and I'm not even going to go through this, but the point I wanted to bring up is, okay, here we go again. They're going to pick one, and they're going to start using all the fear. And it's almost this time they're priming us even more than they did the first one. Because in a lot of ways, they were preparing for the pandemic, right?
Oh yeah.
But they didn't know, like we didn't really know, like the public didn't know. They were doing it behind the scenes, and then very soon after, then it all
They
came
had a
out.
pandemic summit right before
The pandemic
in
summit.
October.
And so but the public really didn't know what was going on. And of course, and so for a lot of us, it felt like it was out of left field. Now they know that we're fresh on the heels. We're still recovering in so many ways from this, but they're already preparing for the next one, and they're going to seed it along the way. And so here they go. Seed it.
What are
Yeah.
they seeding it with?
They're seeding it. All right.
Do we
Another
have
one.
to wear a mask? I want to know.
I don't want to know.
Because if
I
I
don't
never
want-
see a mask or smell that whatever, the disinfectant,
Yeah.
I at one point put the disinfectant on my mask. I'm not kidding you.
That's funny.
Inhaling the fumes.
I
of
don't
the
know. That's
sanitizer.
funny. I don't know why. I think that's funny. All right, here's the next one. And this is the government talking out both sides of their mouth. The Pentagon ran secret anti-vax campaign to undermine China during the pandemic. Oh man, this is just priceless. Yeah, it says the U.S. military launched a secret campaign to counter what it perceived as China's growing influence in the Philippines, a nation hit especially hard by the virus. So it aimed to sow doubt about the safety and efficacy of the vaccines and other life-saving aid that was being supplied by China. So when I saw this, what hit me was just, oh my God. It's like at the time that the whole government, including military, everybody was pushing vaccines on us and on the whole world, they were doing this anti-campaign saying it turned into an anti-vax, but it was aimed at China. And it was
crazy.
aimed at China, but it was influencing the Philippines. And they would do
Oh.
the basic misdirection through social media, having fake internet accounts, impersonating Filipinos, and the propaganda, it morphed into an anti-vax campaign. And social media posts decried the quality of face masks, the quality of the test kits, the quality of the first vaccine that would be available to Philippines, which I believe came from China. Yeah, the Sinovac inoculation, which was coming from China. So it was like completely like outside of anything going on in the US or Europe or whatever. This was the Philippines and China trying to deal with it. And we were in there sowing these seeds of discontent. And here we go. This is the thing, right? This is what we talk about all the time, that Russia is doing it and China's doing it to us. And we complain all the time that they're meddling with our elections and trying to hack us. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, we started off this about how we love our country. We do. This, for me, is more about we're all doing it. And this is why the finger pointing to me sometimes is useless. It's, yeah, we can talk about Russia, we can talk about this, we can talk about that, and we're doing the same thing. We're hacking people left and right. We talk about the China hackers and the Russia hackers. We're probably
and propaganda.
We're better probably at hacking than anybody. And so
I don't know if we're better. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know finding the word better. I don't know. We're pretty sneaky, and I'm sure we're hacking the shit out of a lot of countries and people. And I think I just saw another clip somehow this weekend about when we got caught, the NSA got caught bugging the German chancellor, bugging her phones, and we got caught, and Germany found out about it, and it's funny how it was a couple week controversy, and now it's just swept under the rug, and it's, oh yeah, we were bugging another president of an ally of ours. Oh,
you know what I'm scared about, any prime minister or vice president of any country, I think y'all should not go on any planes anytime soon. That's all I got to say about that. The advice to you all: don't go on a plane anytime soon, because it seems like when you do, it crashes. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Anyway.
I don't either. All right, here is the third of the
let's not talk about that.
Here's the third in the trifecta here. This is just cracks me up again. And NIH scientists, they made $710 million in royalties from drug makers.
Oh,
a fact they tried to hide. So I talk about this a lot, about pharmaceutical industry being in bed with government, and the whole C-19 thing was a ploy, and the vaccine was a money grab. And now we're finding out proof here. And of course, our favorite guy, Mr. Fauci.
Well,
here.
No wonder why the F-man was disappeared. He was in some yacht somewhere in the freaking Maldives or something. He was like down there. He was probably just at the Royal, what's that part of France? It's a real fancy part.
Oh, I don't remember. Riviera? Is it
the Riviera? He's probably in the Riviera in his yacht. He definitely was.
Made a few extra bucks. And now we know that.
No kidding, everyone. Hello.
So out of that 710 million, the payments were made by private companies like pharmaceuticals to license medical innovations. So the thing about this is that they can easily put this on paper and just say, oh yeah, this is a normal thing. We need money to help us create vaccines and create things that help people. 690 million went to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the sub-agency led by the F-man, and 260 of his scientists. Payments skyrocketed during the pandemic era. They saw double the cash flow into the NIH from private sector companies to the prior 12 combined. 1.36 billion was funneled in from private companies into the NIH. It's unclear, and I got to read this. It's unclear that if any of the COVID vaccine royalties from Pfizer or Moderna were a part of this. And of course, the NIH is not talking about that. They're not disclosing if it was or wasn't. I'm not sure exactly where this information came, but it was finally proof that, we finally did get some proof. And this is how. It says the plaintiffs were trying to get these FOIA requests, and they're not like, the NIH is basically, they say the NIH treated FOIA requests like a viral attack on their own, and they don't give them out. It's very, very hard to get this information. Senator Paul Rand has been trying to get these FOIA requests so they can get this information and show that a lot of money was involved in all sorts of areas in the C-19 and the vaccine. The NIH is still redacting pieces of data that would help us more easily connect therapeutics with their government-paid investors. They refuse to show the amount of royalties paid to each individual scientist, because we know the F-man would be on there in a big way.
The F-man.
The F-man. That's pretty good. Anyways, so Those three things really hit me this week. And again, it's just talking out one side or the other. And again, this is when I started to have this awakening, that was the thing that really hit me was the people that I trusted or thought were making decisions in my best interest as the constituents and a taxpayer are not. They're talking out one side and the other side. And I understood about politics and how politicians just say whatever to get elected and whatever. But when you start to look into some of it deeper, it's so much worse than that. It's about so much money being funneled in. I have a lot of people not a lot, but some family members, some people I know, they're like, why are you upset about all this stuff? And I'm like, they're like, it's just capitalism. The capitalism breeds all of this lying and cheating and money grabs. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's capitalism. It's what I call it crony capitalism. And to me, and there's probably other terms that are better, but what it is when the government and big corporations get together and individually per project or per situation make laws or grease the skids to make that company able to do what it wants to do to make more money. All these little individual cases. When you take the hundreds and thousands of those individual cases, the whole system is corrupt. And capitalism on its own, if done in a free market way where you don't have the interference from the government making it like easier for some people and not other people, then I think things would work better. Now, have we ever had that? I'm not sure we've ever had
That's
true
right.
unfettered
That's exactly what I
capitalism.
was about to say.
Yeah, it's
I was going
always
to
been
say,
this way. I get it.
I'm not sure that's ever been
Yeah.
really the case.
I don't
George
think there's ever been
Washington's
pure
on.
capitalism.
Okay.
But it's gotten a lot worse. And now we throw in these global elites that they're like, okay, the Rothschilds, what are some of the other names? Old money, Vanderbilt's, old money that they've been doing this since the 40s and the 50s is we know better. Let us just take care of you. We're the ones that made all the money. We're smarter than you. Our breeding is better than you. Let us just take care of it. And it's gotten to the point now where that's continued and continued. And now you have these global corporate, their ex-government. So I'm watching.
Look at any show about the Wild West, what happened out there. Those people even traveled across the country to, what were they looking for? They acted like they were looking for gold and that was just a front. They weren't actually looking for gold. They were actually overtaking towns at the time to go in and be the controller of all the merchants. So if you look at any of that, they were like, oh, wait a minute, there's people going to the West and we need to stop them because we need to control their merchant trading. So it always was that. It always was that.
It's part of human nature.
For gold. They knew that they were making the gold. Can I just say? They were like, this is how we make the gold. We're not going to go search for it in the mountains. We're going to actually just overtake the towns of the people that are going to look for the gold. And then we're going to steal their gold.
Yeah, stealing gold. Governments are really good at.
Just saying, if you haven't ever looked into anything, when we're like, oh, that was so terrible what happened in those places. Dodge City comes to mind, of course, in Kansas, but out there by you in Montana, and they were all headed to the hills to go find the gold. And
railroad.
It's so funny.
They built the railroad.
Our generation is the last generation that actually learned history. Because I remember it. And the reason I remember it is because I lived in Missouri. And in Missouri, we were taught about Jesse James, the outlaws. Like where I live, Jesse James was like a big deal. And it's really funny how many kids in my class, like the boys were like, I'm Jesse James and do the fake guns and stuff. And you're like, that's how we learned about the gold rush. That's how we learned about outlaws and stuff in our history classes. But they don't teach that now because it's violent. You can't learn that. And it's like, but that's really what happened. I think our generation, the Gen Xers, I think we're the last ones to actually learn anything truly historical. And
I would still question. I think what we even learned was a watered down version that was set to tell the narrative of whatever our
Right.
government wanted.
Right.
And again, we can go on and on about this because you're right, like deception and narratives have been going on forever, but let's really, they're hiding it, they're trying to hide it so much. And I think that with the internet and with more information we have at our disposal, we have to work hard because there's a lot of crap out there. We have the
Mhm.
information there. We have all the real history that we can, that's out there now that wasn't really
Yeah,
taught to us.
and I hate to say, Amazon is probably the only vehicle that you're going to find it, and that's because people want to sell books,
Oh,
and they still want to sell books. They want to sell old books. So for you to
yeah.
find it, you're just going to have to go on Amazon to one of those book traders that have all the old books in their inventory, because Google's not going to tell you, by the way. So just go on Amazon and put in a subject matter.
That's a good
just a
point.
tip.
It brings up
Mhm.
that people have to read, which yeah, a lot of people don't read.
They have lots of digital files, but not on the
I'll tell you
books. They
what. I'll
don't.
tell you what. I actually learn really well from documentaries. And when I told my son, who was brought up in the academic world, went to graduate school and everything, he's just like scoffed at me. That's not real information, whatever. But I don't care. Again, everybody's got a narrative, and most documentaries do have a narrative. But there's
Yeah,
just
they
you just
do.
can
They can be
you,
skewed.
but you have to. It does give a really good pictorial or visual way of the Revolutionary War or what was happening in the Constitution. And if you watch enough of them and piece it together and use some of the stuff you can find in books, I think you get a pretty good idea of some of the history that either I wasn't taught in high school, or just didn't pay attention. I was worried about sports and girls and stuff like that. But I am a big fan of history now. And it was funny because Richard Dreyfuss, who we know from Jaws and Close Encounters, has become kind of a radical. But his point is, it's not left or right. It's we just need to get back to history and civility. And he kept saying we need to talk about civics. We need to teach civics in school. And
I don't know if I agree with them on the civility part, because it was never civility.
you're right. I think that there was a time, though, in that it was more civil. Like in the 40s and 50s, we know now that there was terrible elections and the trash they talked on all the different people that were
Well,
trying to run.
the
That area
depression was
was
caused.
terrible. But
The depression was caused
we had
by
Jimmy
who?
Carter. We had Jimmy Carter who during the 70s we were chill and we were able to pass
Were
laws in
we?
Congress.
Mm.
More so than now,
Vietnam
Sandy.
War
That's
was
what I'm trying
right.
to say. It's yeah, there's no
That's
absolute.
what I mean. I'm like,
But there has been
the
times the 60s were crazy as far as what was going on in the streets, but I think politics at the time we could at least pass bipartisan laws. I don't even know the last time we passed a bipartisan law.
okay. In the 80s, what war was going on in the 80s?
Let's see, in the 80s we had Reagan and we were doing Iran Contra. We were doing a lot of
The Contra. That's
the
it. That's
stuff
the
in
name.
the South
Mhm.
America.
I think
Cold
that was
War.
about it.
Cold War.
Yeah, but it's never really a war.
Oh, it
But
was. It was a
no,
it
it
was
wasn't.
not a shooting war, but there
Not
was
a
a lot of
shooting
fun stuff. All the best spy movies and spy novels were happening back then
in the
because
80s.
in the
Again,
in the Cold War.
I always bring up Gen X. I'm sorry. We were the best. Sorry. We're the best generation. Anyway.
All right,
Nothing
speaking
against
of
all
being the
y'all.
best, why don't we move into your topics here today? And
Well, my
you can.
topic, the first thing I want to talk about. Okay, so my topic is about the FTC, and the head of the FTC goes in front of the council, Jim Johnson, and where I'm going to show a clip about that. But it's interesting because if you would put her up there, scroll up, that is the head of the FTC. She's only 35, which I love when young people make it. She's a law student, but now look at this. Her name is Lena M. Khan. She's British born American legal scholar serving as the chair of the Federal Trade Commission. Okay, she's only 35, which I think is a great accomplishment, but she went to Yale, she went to Williams College. And if you scroll down a little bit, but then you put in there, I don't know why Columbia University is not up there, but she's affiliated with Columbia, who Manoush Shafiq, of course, of Columbia University, There you go, Columbia Law School. So she is there. Anyway, also comes from where? She comes from, she's American, British, Egyptian. Now, she also came from London. She served, I'm talking about Manoush Shafiq at this point.
Mm.
She served on the member of the House of the Lords in the UK since 2020. Now, and so now Lena Khan, and I would say they're affiliated, wouldn't you think? Just a little bit.
Probably ran
But
in similar circles.
yes, and she was a business reporter and researcher, if you can see, from airlines to chicken farming. She focused on the FTC statutory authorities, regularly engaging with hearings from the public. Anyway, scroll on down because I think I have a little bit more, don't I, about her? There we go. So prior to joining the FTC, Khan served as counsel to the U.S. House Judiciary Committee's Subcommittee on Antitrust, Commercial, and Administrative Law. She was also an associate professor at Columbia Law School. Khan is a graduate of Williams College and Yale. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing her up is I'm going to share a clip of her this last week talking about her filing several hundreds of motions against Twitter and especially against Elon Musk. But yet, in this clip, you'll see she's not focusing on actually anti-privacy, like privacy breaches. Like she's going after Twitter just because she
like
wants
Elon.
to somehow filter their information that they put up. But yet she's not going after companies that are actually breaching our privacy, like Ring camera, for instance, by the way, which I have one, which makes me very nervous now. And I should have thought about that. It's so funny when you download an app on your phone, how you start to think, are they monitoring this? What's my privacy like? Like I have to sign a privacy agreement or whatever. Do they sign an agreement with us? Is it reciprocal? Because I don't recall them signing one and giving it to me. Right. So here's a problem. Like your Ring camera, it can go back and forth. Like I've talked to people on my Ring camera. Like I can talk to people. I can hit the microphone and talk to them.
Well, you're supposed to be able to yell at the burglar that's trying to break into your house and say, go away.
What if somebody hacks into your Ring camera, then they can say whatever, or they can monitor your stuff. So,
well, it's funny that you say that because I just ordered this week a privacy kit. When I get it, I'll come back on and talk about it because basically it's a little USB gadget that plugs into my phone and puts noise in there or whatever so that the NSA can't listen to me or whoever, Big Brother or whatever. So it disables that. They can't listen. And then there's something that disables the camera also. And it's also got something for, to put on your laptop camera or whatever. What I didn't get, but also is a product that they actually offer, is that it can actually sniff out cameras. So if you go into a hotel or whatever, you could use this gadget and it'll find hidden cameras or whatever.
Oh, that's
so
neat. That's really neat.
I'm on a kick now about this privacy. Again, it's all about the freedom thing. And it's all know that if you're talking about something, you'll start to get ads. So your phone's listening to apps. A lot of these apps are listening and sending back information.
Absolutely. I'll talk about something like my phone is right here. It's listening. Right. So I guarantee you, once I open up Facebook, something that we talked about will pop up on my screen.
And it's really funny. I was talking about somebody this, and they're like, even like I'm just thinking of something and it's popping up there. So somehow they're tapping into my brainwaves too.
Now that's really scary.
That's really scary.
Done that to me yet. I think too fast. I think too fast. I don't think
you're too fast for them.
I think
you're too sharp for them.
She's already on to another subject, so we're not going to pop that
me
up
too.
on the screen. But
should we show this clip? Are you ready, or you still need to tee it up?
So yes. So what I want to preface this with is, I want you guys to see beyond what that makes sense, because just like the protests that happened at Columbia University, okay, is headed by this woman that was brought over in London, okay, and she is of Egyptian. And our FTC head, she's of a different ethnicity of who knows, I don't know what she is. but it's fine. But the point is that if you don't think that there is a concerted effort to control different pieces of our government and our universities by outside entities from London or from wherever, you have got to look a little deeper, because that's what they said they would do after 9/11.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's play that video. So let me share the screen here and let's go ahead and play.
Recognize himself. Madam Chair, why are you harassing Twitter?
Congressman, thanks for the question. As you might know, the FTC's work on Twitter goes back a decade. Back in 2000,
I'm not talking about a decade. I'm talking about now. 12 demand letters in 10 weeks, over 350 separate requests you've demanded of Twitter. Why are you harassing them?
Twitter has a history of lax security and privacy policies.
You've asked for every single communication relating to Elon Musk, not communications that he just sent to someone or communications he received, but any time he's mentioned. That actually seems more than harassment. That seems like almost an obsession. Why such an intense focus?
Congressman, again, it was found that Twitter's lax privacy policies allowed unauthorized users to co-opt Twitter accounts, including that of Fox News. Subsequently, Twitter voluntarily entered into a consent order with the FTC.
Here's what you wrote in December. Madam Chair, here's what you wrote in December. Identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter has granted access since Musk bought the company. You want to know the name of every journalist a private company has talked to? Think that's consistent with the First Amendment?
Congressman, as a former journalist, I take extremely seriously the valuable work that they do and understand that there can be instances in which government action is unjustifiably
particularly, Madam Chair, if I could just interject, particularly in the context here. It's bad enough if you got government asking a private company about who are the journalists you're talking to, you name 4 of them and say, we want the other names of any journalists you may in fact be communicating with. That's bad enough, and I think a threat to the First Amendment, freedom of the press. But in the context of giving us information about how government had suppressed speech on these platforms, that's the context you're asking for. I think that's particularly troubling, don't you?
Congressman, the consent decree that we have prohibits Twitter from sharing personal information with third parties. When we read in the papers, like everybody else, that Twitter may have granted access to third parties, that's what our teams were seeking information about. Again, this is a company whose history with the FTC goes back a decade.
We got limited time. Madam Chair, who is David Roque?
Could you repeat that, Congressman?
David Roque, R-O-Q-U-E. Who is David Roque?
I'm not familiar with that.
You deposed him last month, June 21st, 2023. David Roque is the independent partner for Ernst & Young's independent assessment of Twitter's program. That's part of this consent decree. Do you know what Mr. Roque said in that deposition?
I'm not aware.
Okay, let me read it for you then, because I think it's pretty important. Mr. Roque testified, again, one of your lawyers, you deposed him, testified that FTC's conduct made him feel as if the FTC was trying to influence the outcome of the engagement before it had started. He said, in some of the discussions that we were having with the Federal Trade Commission, expectations were being conveyed about what those results should be before we had even begun any procedures. They're the independent assessor in this consent decree the FTC has with Twitter, and you're telling the guy who is the person. He's the guy. He's Joe the accountant who's going to get this information. You're telling him, you're putting your finger on the scale, telling him what you want the outcome to be, and he's supposed to be the independent fact finder. Why are you doing that?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with those.
Because it was just filed today, but we are. This is filed in court today, and this is your deposition.
I'm happy to take a closer look at it and be back in touch. I will say, as a general matter, we want to make sure that the assessors and auditors that are responsible for overseeing compliance are doing their job.
You say Mr. Roque's line, what he testified here, what's been filed in court today, that there were suggestions of what they would expect the outcome to be, they being the FTC, there were suggestions of what they wanted him to go find in his independent assessment of the consent decree agreement between the FTC and Twitter.
Again, I'm happy to take a close look and we can be back in touch with you about that allegation, but our staff are consummate professionals. When they conduct these investigations, they're focused on determining whether there was a violation.
Is your attack on Twitter, harassment on Twitter, is that based on the fact that all kinds of Democrats have asked you to do this and frankly some things that you've written about dealing with, quote, disinformation? Does that have anything to do with it, Ms. Khan?
Congressman, we make only independent determinations about whether there were law violations.
The statement from Chairman Nadler, the statements from the letter, the press release and the letter from 7 Democrat senators that had no impact on it, that's not why you're doing it?
Absolutely not. We look very closely at the specific matter at hand. Again,
12 demand letters in 10 weeks telling the independent assessor, hey, put your finger on the scale. This is the results we want. That's not harassment, and it had nothing to do with the fact that every Democrat in this town seemed to be telling you to go after Twitter.
Our focus is on protecting people's privacy and security. Twitter has sensitive data on 150 million Americans, including private messages. We need to make sure, especially given its history going all the way back to 2010, we're doing everything to make sure Twitter is complying with the order.
That's fine. Don't put your finger on the scale, and don't attack the First Amendment and the rights of journalists. I thank the gentleman for yielding. Ms. Khan, earlier, and I believe the gentleman from Arizona brought this up, you said people's privacy is paramount. I couldn't agree more. And as we talked earlier, I do think there's bipartisan support to deal with that, this sweeping up of data that happens, and scarier yet is FBI purchasing that data. So that is of paramount importance. But I would say the First Amendment's of paramount importance too. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And then the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, asked you, what's disinformation? And you said you don't really have an opinion on that. Was that a fair assessment of your answer?
As part of our job at the FTC, we're focused on deception and fraud and that sort of thing.
You wrote a couple years ago in a Law Review article, digital businesses such as Twitter disserve their users by facilitating the spread of disinformation. What were you talking about there then? What's disinformation?
I'm happy to take a closer look at the material you're mentioning, but as part of our work at the FTC, we've seen how fraud and scams can sometimes proliferate on these social media websites. We've launched an inquiry to try to understand why are some of these crypto scams really proliferating on these sites, and what can we be doing?
These are the first 2 sentences in the introduction of the piece you wrote, again, just a couple years ago. Digital businesses such as Twitter disserve their users by facilitating the spread of disinformation. Who decides what's disinformation?
From the FTC's perspective, it's deception and fraud.
That's fine. You can keep using synonyms, but I want to know who decides that it's deception, who decides that it's fraud, who decides that it's disinformation. In this case, you're talking about social media companies and what gets posted on their platform. Who decides what's disinformation, what isn't?
So, Congressman, again, at the FTC, we're focused on fraud and deception. There is a legal standard about what constitutes fraud. Again, this is about...
But you didn't say fraud or deception, you said disinformation. And my concern is, again, and it's probably the 3rd time I've talked about this, but the sustained attack on Twitter when the ownership there changed and the platform was committed to not taking down speech, not taking down posts, allowing the sharing of information, and not censoring information. And we just had a major decision last week from a court in Louisiana, a federal court in Louisiana, where they said the government was, in fact, pressuring big tech companies to censor, and big tech companies were willing to go along with it. Now we have a change there, and you're going after the one company that's changed how they're doing things. That's what concerns me, particularly in light of the fact that you just wrote about this a few years ago, saying this is what goes on.
Congressman, I'm glad to have the opportunity to clarify some issues here. So we at the FTC have no view on who should or should not own a company. All we care about is that the company is following the law. That's really what our focus is.
We've covered that ground. I want to know about disinformation and who decides what's disinformation. You think the government should decide that?
Congressman, the way I see it is concentrations of economic power, including over speech platforms and communications platform, that it's that concentrated power and the ability to pick who gets heard, who doesn't get heard, to make these types of decisions. That, I think, is concerning to all of us, and the FTC's job is to be promoting...
You know what kind of speech was getting censored? Do you know what the court said last week? Have you read the opinion, by the way?
I have not. It did not concern the FTC.
You know what kind of speech was getting censored? You know what the court said? Conservative speech. Conservative speech was what was... that suppression was virtually all conservative. This is not Jim Jordan talking about. This is not Republicans on the Judiciary Committee talking. This is the federal judge who had the facts, 86 pages of facts, and laid out to put the facts and the law together in this opinion, strong opinion, which said it was a conservative speech that was getting censored and labeled as disinformation.
So, Congressman, I fully understand why, given the extreme concentration of power over some of these speech platforms, why people would be afraid and worried about censorship. I couldn't agree more that when you have a handful of people making decisions about what gets seen, what doesn't get seen, who gets heard.
And you think the remedy to that is for government to decide what's disinformation and what's not?
Congressman, at the FTC, our job is to promote competition. More competition means more people making these decisions, and I think that can alleviate some of the concerns about censorship that you're sharing.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair, now recognizes the gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Wow. So he just kept trying to ask her the same question, of course, different ways, and she still did not answer. Who controls, in their view, what is disinformation and what is not? So that's what I really wanted to highlight, honestly. It really wasn't about Twitter as much as it was about disinformation. Who deems the disinformation? We found when we went through I don't know if you remember, of course, during COVID, if you mentioned the C word at all, it got taken down by Facebook saying, this doesn't follow our community.
I mean, we still try to be careful about it.
It's insane. It's insane that, but you have to know, Facebook is a private platform paid by whomever. And if you're going to use it, you might be targeted to have disinformation. Okay, they're not our government. They're just a platform. Okay. However, when government got involved in these social media organizations, paid them, that's when it's a problem. Okay. Our own tax dollars went towards these platforms to censor us.
Right.
And that is a problem. And how people didn't see this at the time, or is beyond me. Because I mean, I saw it. I don't know. Maybe I was clued in on a couple things on how they were doing things, but everybody was like, oh my gosh, the government did that. Yeah, that's what they did. And they did that to push an agenda. So what's concerning, regardless of where you lean, and it doesn't matter, but if there's an entity that's going to censor one party or the other, that's not free speech at all. We don't have free speech.
Right.
So people are getting targeted because of, like I was telling you earlier about this one company. And I would like you all, we'll put the YouTube video in the comments because it's important that you watch the rest of it, because another person comes on to question her about other things that you need to know about. And this one company is targeting people on their denomination, what church they go to. Like they were actually showing, just spying on them as to what church they went to. Why? What's behind that agenda? What's behind that? So if you sign up for an app, if you sign up for a social media platform, if you sign up for anything, if you don't read the fine print, it's in there. Believe me, it's in there. Their privacy on saying that they can share your stuff or they can monitor your stuff. It's not in those words. Obviously, I'm just making it easy for you to understand. You signed up for it. You signed. I agree. Yep. I agree that you can use my information. You can use my location.
You can sell it to anybody. Everything.
Yeah. And so if you think that they're not utilizing that, they are. Just like we were talking about. You can talk about something and then boom, it's on your Instagram, it's on your Facebook, it's on your Twitter. All of a sudden that subject matter is up. I'll talk about something that I want, like, hey, I want to buy something or other to somebody else. And then the next thing you know, I get ads on Facebook, on Instagram, on all the different.
Put a comment in here if you're watching this and this has happened to you, and tell us, what were you thinking? So what were you talking about? And what is showing up in ads? Most everybody's had this happen.
So you have to know, because, okay, even if I put my phone away, say I put my phone away, guess what I have in my house? I have Alexa.
Yeah.
And guess what she does?
She's listening to you.
She be listening. So if you want your stuff private, I have a smart car. It's listening. Okay. Like seriously, like everybody can know my location because of my smart car, because I have an app on my phone.
Smart TVs too.
You
That
know?
was another thing that I didn't think of, but a lot of, not a lot, but some TVs actually have cameras in them too, which I didn't even know about.
Yeah.
You know, you can do video conferencing through your smart TV. Smart everything is going to listen
Smart
to us.
everything means that you're being monitored.
And so part of this is, I think one of the lessons I think to be taken from this is that, do we love the fact that all these smart things are listening to us and grabbing our information? No, we don't love it.
No, it's our privacy.
But these are private corporations who our laws basically say, for the most part, private corporations have the right to do what they want and sell you a product. If you buy the product and they disclose what they're doing, even though it might be the finest of the finest print and nobody reads these things, we don't, but they're there.
And now, hold on one second. The finest print. Now get this. I have an HP printer that I print off some things from, right? And I've got a smart app. I have an app on my phone that can print to my printer if it's on. So they're monitoring that too. So again, like every entity in my life, my phone, my cable, my TV, my printer, everything can be monitored.
Your microwave,
and if you don't
maybe
think so,
refrigerator, maybe. They're trying to get everything linked to everything to go over to the internet. And I think, just to bring this home again, what we're saying is that private companies are allowed to do this, and we are opting in to do this. If we want to use their products and services, we do this. And we don't love it. It's just the way society has grown up. We've been duped and fooled into it. But
this is convenient.
What we're saying is, government doesn't necessarily have the right to dictate to those private companies what they can do or they can't do. Now, yeah, the FTC is trying to make sure that there's fair competition and whatever, but what happens is you get this partisan stuff that creeps in, and you get the FTC, who's supposed to, protect from monopolies, but they seep in this part. Maybe if the liberal or the Democratic administration wants to shut down some stuff that isn't favorable to them, they slide it in under the FTC or the SEC.
And so that means that your conservative view now is considered disinformation.
That's right. And it's being filtered out.
That is where the problem comes in. That is and same with vice versa. If there was a conservative cabinet in and they were doing the same thing to the Democratic views, calling it disinformation, it's still wrong on both sides. So I'm not even going with one or the other. It's just that she never would answer the question. She said, no, we're about deception and fraud. So she would not answer about disinformation. Now, I wonder, and I did not research this, and if you all know out there, please put in the comments, who is the head of the disinformation part of government? Because they created one during COVID, if you remember.
They did, and if I remember, it got so much bad press. They basically disbanded it. It's probably there under a different name.
But did they? Right.
Right.
So
it's there.
What I was about to say.
But they literally called it the disinformation something, and it was like so obvious to people. Like, oh, you make the determination on what is disinformation, and so they disbanded it. But yeah, it's still there somewhere. We know.
I wonder if it's under the FTC.
It's probably, in my view, they just put it in all of the agencies. All of these bureaucratic agencies that have not been elected, we didn't elect them. They're now making a lot of these decisions that affect our day-to-day life.
They're appointed. Yeah, totally different. When you're not elected and you're appointed and you're allowed a 7-year term, this lady is allowed a 7-year term. She'll be 42 when she ends this term in her career. Then what is she going to go on to?
Look at Chairman Powell, basically of the Fed. That's a private organization, as we've talked about before. The Fed is private. It's not even
Right.
part of a government. But look how powerful that position is. And Trump wants to federalize the Fed. He wants control over the Fed completely. We'll see if that's good or bad. I don't really know. But the point of it all is that there's so much deception here. And yeah, you have to look out for yourself. And this is the thing. We have to look out for ourselves because, yeah, these private companies are out for themselves. And it's what I love to talk about. It's this crony capitalism. When you get government trying to get in bed with these companies to try to manipulate us with a narrative, this is what I want to rebel against. I want to be aware of it, stuff like this. And I want to know when they get in bed. And Jim Jordan, in this case, is trying to push back and say, obviously, his point of view is that you guys are trying to sanction conservative voices and conservative messages. And so that's obviously his reason why he's pushing back. It's good to push back on government. Is it good to maybe even push back on some of these private companies? Yeah, maybe. But again, our law basically says private companies can, if you want their service and they tell you in there somewhere that they're doing things that maybe we don't love, we've signed up for it. That's the law.
Right.
So again, if you just don't like that, then maybe you need to cancel some of your social media accounts, buy a dumb printer, buy a dumb phone. There are people that want to go back to flip phones because of that.
They're not going to be able to because it won't talk to the cell phone.
It won't do anything. Yeah.
They've updated it so much. They still will be able to monitor you regardless because analog versus digital versus all of that. I'm sorry to tell you, but it's not possible.
It's going to be interesting. I bought this gadget. I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to test it or whatever. But I probably shouldn't be under the illusion that I'm completely private now. I used to have an Alexa. I don't want to have one now. Obviously, I'm here on YouTube. I'm not very private. So they're going to get me.
There is the thing. We come on a public platform recording something. We know it's being recorded. We know our likenesses will be shared. We know that people will watch it. We know that they could track us, blah, blah, blah. If you're not doing anything nefarious or against the law or abiding citizen, you think they can't do anything to me. Or can they? There's the question. Or can they? I've not committed a crime, but that doesn't mean that corruption can't come against me, or me sharing an article or sharing a view isn't considered disinformation.
You remember that time that you called me up one day and you said, the FBI came to my door, and you like panicked? Was it the FBI or the Secret Service or something? Exactly. And you were freaking out. I think we might have said something on our YouTube channel. So
I was like, oh my God. No,
we can be paranoid.
Service. I'm sorry. It was the Secret Service.
The Secret Service.
Right. I was like,
it turned out that it was a neighbor or something, right? They were just trying to ask questions about a neighbor.
They were doing a background on a neighbor. So
we get it. It could happen.
And he flashes his badge and I'm like, oh, what did I do? What did I say?
What did I say?
I know I didn't say anything. I'm sorry.
And she's like going back to the episodes, rewinding. No, she didn't do that.
I didn't do any of that. But the thing is that we set up this government supposedly as to not remember and I don't know what descent you are, but I do have a little bit of English in me. So I would say that my ancestor that came over on the Susan Constant was trying to get away from some tyrannical things, right? So I don't know if it was religion or just money or why they needed to come over, or they just wanted to start a new adventure and new life and own some land, maybe. Who knows what they did it. So the thing is that, remember, everything was called tyranny, and treason and tyranny was like totally like you could, if you even said something in public against England, it was treason, and you could be beheaded for that. You could be hung, beheaded, whatever. If you said anything against the government, anything against the
monarch back then,
monarchy,
the king,
against anything, even if you didn't say it, they could accuse you of it, and then you'd get your head cut off.
You might be burned. You might have been burned at the stake. I don't know.
Henry VIII. Henry VIII. He beheaded so many of his wives. If he could behead his wives, can you imagine how many people he actually beheaded for something less? And I can't even imagine.
Heads are
So
rolling.
that heads are rolling. That's exactly what that means. And it's funny how people use these terms and have no idea what like I used to sing London Bridge is falling down.
Cute little
And
song
ring
about
around the
war.
rosy. Yeah, ring around the rosy. Pocket full of posy, ashes, we all fall down. You caught the plague, people, okay?
Oh
And you
my
died.
God. And
That's
you
what we
died and you
sang.
rotted. Oh my
We
God.
caught the plague and we died.
All
Like,
right.
what?
I don't know. I think we're
those
I
things,
think we're like digressing
well,
now.
what I'm saying is that we need to protect our freedom of speech.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
protect this. This is important. 1776. This is why I'm wearing this shirt, because that was our independence from England, right? The American Revolutionary War. And it's because we needed to pull away. Of course, it's because we were sick of sending back all the proceeds of everything that was
And being
the tobacco
taxed and
fields.
being told what to do
Mhm.
from
Exactly.
an old
From over there.
monarchy. Yeah. From
And
way
then
over
and then
there
they
across
put
the
in
pond.
yeah, and then they put in some like really bad people in charge over here, ahead of the militaries, their military. And it's a lot.
No, the
And it's only
Constitution, the Revolution
1776.
is really
Yeah.
good information for everyone to learn, to go back. Like I'm going back and relearning and like really relearning, and it's fascinating. But it really applies to all the stuff we talk about in this stuff. The Freedom Life 3.0. It affects all of that because our original founding fathers, although they may have had some flaws, as we all did, they created something unique in the world. And we saw eventually the power and the creativity and the drive that Americans have and created this wonderful country. Does it have some issues right now? Yeah. That's also why we're talking about the show, why we're talking about this, because we want to get back to that as what we can and or protect ourselves the best we can. So on that note,
protecting
freedom of speech, perfect thing.
Is what we need to do. So
Absolutely. All right,
protect
folks.
it.
Thanks for tuning
All right.
in today. Leave us a
Hey.
comment. Let us know what you think of the show. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and go ahead and like the video too, because that helps us out. We can bring more videos. We can bring more people online and let us know what you want to talk about. So
Topics.
we'll see you next week.